Ladies and gentlemen, go for our wild ride with the Honey Badgers. But beware, the sweetest kittens have the sharpest claws. For your own safety, strap yourself in and hold onto something as we enter the Pussycat cast. Taboo topics.
Wait a second. Men are human too.
Marginalized men. Uncomfortable truths.
Suck!
The Pussycats aren't afraid of heavy lifting.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pussycat cast number 8. It's a dangerous job, but somebody's got to do it. This week's Verbal Valkyries, well, actually, there's only one Verbal Valkyrie this week. That is, of course, our Polecat Punisher turned part-time Pussycat pugilist, Hannah, and myself, the clam in this? No, I'm the pickle. Whatever. Actually, in today's show, since Hannah's the one that's outnumbered, it's actually a pickle jar with one clam in it. So, welcome to the show. Now, normally the Pussycat Cast is a news show, but I wanted to do some special things this time. So, just to sort of get you guys acclimated to what we're doing today, today's episode of the Pussycat Cast will be a little bit different from the usual story hounding and lol farming that we do here at HBR. Last week we had a show that talked about men who serve in the military and brought some actual vets on to discuss their time there and their experiences within our modern warrior culture. Since the majority of people who serve and sacrifice themselves in the military happen to be men, we thought it would be a good relevant topic to discuss, and we didn't want to do it injustice by talking about it without having any experience ourselves. Before even going this route, I had actually originally was trying to get guests on who do dangerous and risky jobs, which are also male-dominated fields that most people take for granted. So to discuss dangerous jobs today, our guests are General Machinist, Mechanical Repair Technician, QA Jerk, and all-around metal worker and small engine mechanic Nick Boyle, and a journeyman roofer, third-year scaffolder, and second-year carpenter Mark, or you might know him as Marking Bad on YouTube. The reason why I wanted to do this about this show, because this is something that people, it's like there are men that do jobs that we don't see what goes into it, but we do benefit from what comes of it. I remember I can't remember his name now, but he's the guy who does the Dirty Job show. For some reason,
Mike Rowe.
Just blank. Mike Rowe, right? He was talking about how, people turn on a light switch and then there's electricity. There's a light on inside. It's a miracle. It's something that when you think about all the things that are involved with like making that happen, or you take a shit and you flush the toilet and it's gone. It's gone and you never have to deal with it again. I mean, this is a miracle of technology, and at least people who live in big cities especially, but anybody anywhere that has access to these sort of modern conveniences, they don't realize how much goes into it and how much of it is up, maintained and kept up by men. And some of it is dangerous, and that's why I wanted to, get some of you guys on. Marking Bad, what do you do now, and what is the title, and how do you describe it? Like, basically, what does it entail, what you do?
Well, right now I'm a journeyman roofer with a small company, and I've got to be able to drive the truck. I've got to be able to do all the tasks that any other journeyman roofer would do. So I'm handling live torches that are between 75,000 and 120,000 BTU. If there's a tar kettle on site, you've got a pair of 120,000 BTU propane torches that are heating asphalt to 500 degrees. It's not something that's particularly pleasant to interact with directly. And I have to do this year round. So, once you get down to minus 25, it's really difficult to handle the material. It tends to be pretty fragile because of how cold it gets. But imagine 30 degrees Celsius, roughly 90 Fahrenheit, plus you got 500 to 525 degree Fahrenheit asphalt that you're mopping about, or you're playing with torches that are pumping out 800 degree heat. Mm-hmm. And you got to do that on a roof. You got to be able to lift anywhere between 50 to 100 pounds consistently.
Ladder?
Well, we're not supposed to carry things on ladders, but you are at heights. So on an average commercial building, you're between 2 and 4 stories tall. That assumes that you're not on like a commercial or industrial high rise. If you're on one of those, I mean, if you go to New York, some of those buildings are damn tall.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not in a city that has anything more than usually 60 stories, but I mean, 60 stories up is a long ways. That you can actually feel the building swaying.
What about you, Nick? What do you do, and how do you describe it?
Well, I was laid off at Christmas, but up until then, the last 2 years, I've been mechanical repairman.
Mm-hmm.
So we fix and maintain any sort of machinery, hand tools, power tools, pneumatic tools, air tools, lathes, mills, grinders, surface grinders, table saws, routers, planers.
Yeah.
Whatever we sold, we maintained and repaired. And that would include machining parts if required.
Did you ever have days where you were understaffed and overworked? Or was that relatively...
Absolutely.
That was pretty common, like skeleton crews and stuff like that?
Just the stereotype of roofers is not a particularly positive one, no matter where you go. They tend to be, I mean, roofing companies need strong backs, weak minds, and warm bodies, generally speaking. So, I mean, regardless of where you go, you're going to end up with some percentage of people that are not necessarily employable otherwise.
High on drugs.
That tends to be a problem. There, a lot of I'm not certainly not saying it's that I know how many roofers tend to be former criminals or ex-convicts, but I've worked with no shortage of them. Mm-hmm. And so these people may or may not have dependency issues or substance abuse issues or very, very difficult home lives that keep them away from work. But yeah, I've had no shortage of times where I've had to figure out what I'm going to do for a day because I'm down 2 bodies or something.
Did you have any, I know you said that there's no shortage of ex-cons. Did you guys have any vets too, or ex-military or anything like that?
Worked with a couple. I mean,
yeah.
And that's the thing is roofing is such an ugly, nasty, physically demanding job that in Western Canada, about 5 or 6 years ago, almost all of the roofing companies in the prairies were actively pursuing temporary foreign workers. We were bringing over staff from the UK, from Germany, from Poland. We got one fellow that was a Filipino who had been working in the Middle East for the last 20 years. And we were desperate for bodies.
All right. Okay. Well, so did you guys have so considering all of that, what would you say were the standards in terms of workplace safety where you worked? And this is for both of you guys, but I'll let Marking answer first.
Depending on what environment it's in, they can vary from absolutely none in residential to you probably have to do paperwork until coffee break if you're in an industrial area. Like I've been to the oil field as both a roofer and a scaffolder, and you're doing paperwork until coffee break. Your first coffee break, you sit down, you finish signing up your paperwork, and then after coffee, you actually go to work.
That makes sense. I guess I can see that.
Well, I mean, when you're in an environment where the explosive potential of the plant around you is very high, and you're dealing with stuff like hydrogen fluoride or hydrogen sulfide, which kills you in under 3 breaths. I mean, you've got to be really aware of what you're doing, and you've got to be especially aware of open flames.
Nick, what do the standards for safety for the kind of work you did? What was it like?
Well, as a machinist, I mean, there are some rules. There are some basic rules that you should follow, and they always have signs. They always have signs up, but that doesn't mean anything. There are some rules that we all know that half of them don't follow. No rings, no gloves. No long sleeves, no long hair, no hanging clothes, glasses on all the time. And yet, I can't count the times that I've seen machinists lose bits of their fingers or their fingers. Break their teeth because of things going flying. Take the chuck key out of the chuck. And yet, boom! I've seen trucks go flying. I've seen truck keys hit people. And the thing is you're in an environment where it's always go, 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 and then go a little more.
When you say go, do you mean like there's pressure to work fast or get?
Always.
There's like a
Always.
timeline. Okay.
It is always a go, go, go. There is no stop. Time is money. When they're charging the customer, $1,500 to $3,000 an hour to run some of these CNCs.
Mm-hmm. So do you know when they these places where they quote them? Because I used to work with contractors that do like drywall, painting, that kind of thing. And when contractors would give an estimate to their clients, they would not charge by the hour; they would charge by the job. Because obviously, if you're a smart person, you're not going to allow someone to charge you by the hour, because then they're going to take however long it takes, and it's going to kill you. So you make them charge you by the job. However, what that means is the guy is going to try and get the job done as fast as possible, so that he doesn't lose any money.
You see, a lot of the big shops. Okay, there's a lot of in Ottawa. There's a lot of government machine shops that only do military contracting. I've worked at a few of those. They charge the big bucks, and they charge them by the hour. Mm-hmm. I've worked at a lot of custom prototype shops as well. They will charge by the job. They have just small job shops. They charge by the hour. But it's the big shops, the big production, commercial shops. Those are the ones where I've seen the real injuries. Those are the ones where I've seen the real pressure. Yeah, the smaller shops. I've seen some dumb injuries, but nothing like I've seen in the big shops.
Okay.
Nothing even close.
You said before you were a roofer, you were a scaffolder. Is there anything there that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I wasn't present for it, but while I was, I'd actually had a rough winter one year, and I was working in a trailer manufacturing shop, and I worked with a guy who had been a scaffolder. He fell 192 feet and pretty much hit every member of his scaffold. He kicked himself in the head 3 times, in the back of the head with his heels, and broke his spine. And he survived. And 18 months later, he was working with me.
Really?
Yeah. He somehow had been... Apparently, the angels were watching, because he managed to survive that, and 18 months later, he was capable of walking around and doing basic construction tasks.
So this guy, just to reiterate, he fell from a scaffold 192 feet, hit every part of it on the way down, to the point where his body twisted to the point where he was kicking the back of his own head with the heels of his feet. Then he was in traction, I assume, in the hospital, and you said 18 months?
It was 18 or 22 months. It's been almost 15 years since I worked with the guy.
So something like between 18 and 20 months, so basically a couple of years, he was working with you again. Now, was he, I'm assuming he wasn't the same, like he wasn't able to do the stuff he was able to do before?
No, he did not go back scaffolding. He was working as an apprentice carpenter at a trailer building shop at that point when I met him. I want to say it's last summer or the summer before. I worked at a fertilizer plant northeast of where I live, and then immediately after I left there, they had a fatality, and it was actually amongst the laborers. But they had a hopper system that had plugged, and so this guy was trying to fiddle with it. And I mean, this is, like I said, after I left that plant. I'd actually been there 4 different times for various shutdowns they've had. This guy fell into the hopper, was submerged in material that this plant produces, and during the rescue attempt, he was decapitated by a loader.
Holy shit, man! Wait, what's the material that he was submerged in? Do you know what it was?
It was some kind of fertilizer end product. I'm not sure, but he was gonna suffocate to death.
Yeah, right. So he was drowning in something, and then they went to they
attempted to dig him out using the loader.
Yeah,
and they decapitated him.
Now, you mentioned fire and firefighters. The one good thing in that job is that there's been a lot of advances in safety equipment. I think that there's been a great deal of advance in breathing equipment and so on over the last 50 100 years that it's not like a safe job. I wouldn't say it's a safe job, but there's a great deal that's changed between the way it was done in the past and the way it is now. And so it's a lot of times now, especially with the changes in building materials and how flammable, or not building materials, but the things that are in your building, like your furniture and stuff. When you hear about deaths in a fire, a lot of times it's because the stuff inside the building burned really fast, and the people in the building were asphyxiated, not as often because firefighters went inside and tried to rescue them. And it's not good for people that's happened, but it's good for firefighters, obviously, that their equipment is better, their safety equipment, their personal protective equipment, and so on has really advanced. If you think about the safety stuff, all right, there are industries in which failing to follow safety protocols can carry the death penalty by way of logic. You screw this up, you can get killed doing it. You can go over the edge of the boat if you stick your foot in the coils and fall into the water and drown, or get your leg torn off. And, end up under, like crab fishermen can end up actually under the cage, which is a huge metal cage. So there's where the failure to follow that can carry such terrible penalty if they're not following it because of that. And the threat of paying a fine isn't going to be much of a deterrent either.
Every single year of both apprenticeships I've been in, we've had specific portions of the course focus on OSHA. And every single year, we have literally been told that every single page, every single rule in an OSHA handbook is literally written in blood. Every one of those rules they have is there because somebody has bled.
A lot of times companies are not held responsible when they fail at safety standards. And I know several people that have been put on the job. I've had a workers' comp eligible heat injury myself. And what these big companies like to do is they just keep appealing until they get somebody who reduces your payment, or until something happens to keep you from making the hearing and then they refuse to reschedule, or some other thing comes along and they can get out of it. And quite frequently there will be something, and then the company doesn't end up having to compensate the employee. So like you hear about these big settlements that this employee or that employee got for some seemingly minor injury. That's a rarity in comparison to the number of people who get hurt on the job and walk away not just the worse for wear physically, but also financially.
You said it's a little difficult to pin down, maybe a consistent issue, but you did say something that I thought was really interesting: risk assessment. And we do know that testosterone it does cause men to take more risks. It is like one of the reasons why we do. It's hard to determine whether or not that, obviously taking risks is not necessarily always a good thing, because there is the downside of that. But I think that might be one of the reasons why they take the jobs too, because I'm not really sure, like, if you try to do the job of a roofer, a scaffolder, a metal worker, a machinist, Alaskan fisherman, I don't think there's any way you can do those jobs and not take any risks at all, and be really decent at it. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, my father's absolutely petrified of heights, and I am scared shitless of falling. So, me being a scaffolder was taking me way outside of my comfort zone when I started doing it. And yet, not even 5 months ago, I was sat 90 feet in the air on a 6-inch, like literally sitting on a 6-inch beam, tearing apart a scaffold that was hung in the air. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to take some risks. And evolutionarily, if you could take a risk and you could get a big payoff, well, guess what? You look like a pretty good provider suddenly. So if you could jump out of a tree and land on a bear's back and break it, well, yeah, you took a risk, but it paid.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of the guys you come in contact with that have some really fucked up shit happen to them all survive. So, and that's amazing, except for the guy who got decapitated by
a loader.
By a loader.
Yeah. I don't believe I'd ever met the person, but I mean, he was, as I understand it, he was a fairly young man.
Oh, that's a shame.
He was in his 20s.
Mm-hmm. So, is the money worth it? Do you think the money's good enough?
I think so. I mean, certainly in the scaffolding, it's definitely worth it. Like I said, I mean, that's part of why I went scaffolding, was I wanted to challenge myself.
Do you think that, well, because I wouldn't know this, so is it your job in part to sort of make sure these guys aren't doing anything stupid, or, you know, that you're supposed to kind of make sure that they're being safe, at least to some extent?
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
Especially in the province that I'm in, the changes to OSHA here very much put the pressure on the field level staff and the field level supervision to ensure that the process is as safe as you can reasonably make it. So, I mean, I've got a couple of pretty young guys that work with me. They're brothers. Neither of them had been told that the hook blades we use for some roofing material, if you ever get them stuck in you, you have to remove them up the wound. You have to return them out the wound track. So, like, we're talking like a lino blade or something similar, where it's got a hook in it. If you put that into your arm or into your leg, if you try to pull it away, you're just going to tear that wound bigger. And I mean, a couple of guys in their early 20s, nobody told them that. And the one of them's been doing this 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's absolutely my job to make sure that they know how to do a bottle check on a propane bottle so that there's not propane leaking onto the roof. It's my job to make sure that they're not, you know, I've had to keep the one brother away from the other brother because one's got a torch going and the other's got a flammable glue that he's working with.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's and these guys, are you the one that's supposed to train them, or do they show up supposedly trained already?
That's what the apprenticeship process is. I mean, you go to school for 6 months every year for 4 years as a roofer, and I can have up to 4 apprentices, and it's my job to ensure that I give them the best possible mentorship. Mm-hmm. I have to teach these young men how to not harm themselves and how not to burn down buildings, frankly.
These companies, when you have an injury, they find a way to get rid of you. And what this company tried to do was the never-ending stream of paperwork. Oh, you have to get your back checked out. Why do I have to get my back checked out? I had a heat injury. Oh, you have to get tested to see if you're a diabetic. Why do I have to get tested to see if I'm a diabetic? Why is that your business? Well, that could have caused your heat injury. You know, and they were going to go through, and so I applied for unemployment, and they had me back on the job 24 hours after they approved my unemployment. So apparently all those things, you know, mattered so much that they only mattered until I was going to get unemployment, and then I went back. Mm-hmm. And then of course I got the lecture about, you know, if you see any safety issues, any fire safety issues or anything like that, you should tell us first, because I was the one that went through channels with the company and talked to the manager, then the district manager, then the regional manager about the fire safety violations, and I was the one that filled out the paperwork that went to corporate about the fire safety violations, so they knew I was the one that called OSHA. Needless to say, I was out of there 6 months later.
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's what happens.
Yep.
If you're, and like I said when I described that story about the maintenance sprinkler fitter, I mean, he was a squeaky wheel, and he's blackballed from that industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people wonder why the problem of certain types of injuries and certain types of professions never gets solved. Well, it's because if you try to solve that problem, you're the squeaky wheel. You don't get the grease. You get replaced.
I don't think I have PTSD, but I've not talked to a psychiatrist or psychologist to see if I do.
Yeah. I mean, it's you think a lot of guys just say, well, this is the job, and then they just go on with it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so,
you know, PTSD is basically just a normal human function crossing the line between a functional application of human instinct and human learning to where it interferes with your life, and where it becomes not just harmful to you but hard to live with, because it's basically learning from experience and reacting to that and developing a higher degree of awareness and a sort of a closer connection to things that have happened, specific things that have happened to you, than to all of the other things that have happened to you. If you really want to boil it down and take all of the various details out of it that we understand as the pain and suffering of it, it's basically, it's like, in a way, it's like having extreme allergies, food allergies that almost kill you when you eat the wrong food. It's your self-preservation system getting beyond control. So everybody has that direction of learning from stuff like this.
Just to bring out a little bit of perspective, I have this like list of the most dangerous jobs. It starts on the really, really soft end with teacher, which is the least of this list, in 13th place. But where roofers are the 6th most dangerous job in the world, apparently. This is according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, so maybe it only applies to like the states. But I'm guessing that in Canada it's probably comparable.
Pretty similar.
Yeah. So roofers at 25.2 per 100,000. This is a fatal injury rate. So these are deaths for the most part. And then above that, there are farmers and ranchers at 26 out of 100,000. Garbage collectors at 35.8, so about 36. Pilots at 63. Fishers at 80. And then the most dangerous, and what do you think the most dangerous job is in America? Is logging. Yes, lumberjacks. Mm-hmm. So I have this little short article that I want to read about a logger who is talking about his experience doing his job. And this is how it goes. Okay. There's no telling how many times Bill Turney had cheated death in the 54 years he worked in the timber industry. But last June, at age 70, he finally lost out. He was cutting a large tree. So the guy was working until he was 70. He was cutting a large tree in Johnston County, Arkansas, and as it fell, it hit another tree and it struck him. Turney is one of many logging fatalities in the industry that occurs every year. In 2010, deaths among loggers increased from 59 to 36, from 36 in 2000. So in 2009, it was 36 deaths. In 2010, it was 59 deaths. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports this. One of the biggest dangers is that the logger cannot see broken tops of trees or limbs hidden by live branches, said Dana Hinckley, founder of Logger Rescue, which trains workers in safety and rescue techniques. The broken tops that snagged in the canopy are called widowmakers for their tendency to work loose and fall on the heads of lumbermen. Violent storms can raise the risk by twisting these trees, and special saw techniques are required to release some of that tension before the final cuts can be safely made. The macho culture of the logging industry makes safety training difficult, however. They think they know how to cut trees because Grandpa taught them how to do it, said Hinckley. That good old boy attitude keeps them from training. Logging is safer now than in the past, though, thanks to safer equipment, according to Guy Friogi, a safety manager for Seaway Timber in Massena, New York. We use a feller buncher to cut down most trees, he said. It's on tracks and operators are enclosed in a cab, keeping them isolated from danger. That protects loggers most of the time, but where a stand of trees is too thick, they have to revert to the old-fashioned method, which is using a chainsaw. Dana sounds like a woman, but it's a man that started the program, or he works at this safety initiative, which I'm glad for. Although I mean, would you guys agree with the macho culture thing? In terms
logging?
of no, in doing dangerous jobs in general, and what you guys know anyway.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, I especially in construction. I haven't done a whole lot of construction, but I'm friends with quite a few journeyman carpenters, and they're just full of beefy, beer-filled testosterone.
Even in my own family, my husband was told that he should be making $60 an hour, as he's got a massage therapy degree. When he's in an area that profession is saturated here, he could probably make money like that if he moved somewhere where massage therapists are not a dime a dozen. But to just say, oh, go out and do this and you will make the money is bullshit. And it's that way in any profession. It's that way in any situation. But yeah, you see men in that situation where they don't have somebody supporting them. They don't have somebody backing them. It's them and the judge. They can't afford a lawyer. They have no choice but to find a way to meet the judge's demand if they are not going to go to jail. If they don't meet the judge's demand, they get locked up. So they go and they do jobs like this. That are not necessarily jobs that they would have otherwise chosen.